Before this system was written into law, there were other ways of living on this land, ways that honored balance, community, and gender beyond a rigid binary. Welcome back to the Revolution Resolution. I'm Malaika Tubbs, and today we're taking 5 minutes to remember something essential. The story we are living in was not the first story told on this land, and it does not have to be the last. As we begin thinking about the democracy we want to build together, we need to remember that the worldview the Founding Fathers wrote into law wasn't the only vision available. It wasn't the inevitable one, and it certainly wasn't the oldest one. Long before the Declaration of Independence, long before the Constitution, long before the idea of American manhood or American womanhood existed, this land was home to nations with entirely different understandings of identity, community, and power. When Lewis and Clark encountered the tribes whose land they were crossing, they met societies whose beliefs directly contradicted the worldview the founders were shaping. Many indigenous nations honored women as leaders, chiefs, diplomats, and warriors. People we now call Two-Spirit held sacred roles. They were healers, mediators, visionaries, whose identities were seen as gifts, not threats. Community was organized around balance, reciprocity, and relationship rather than domination. Children were treated as sacred beings, not future property, labor, or extensions of someone else's power. These weren't small differences. They were fundamentally different imaginations of humanity. And that difference frightened the men who were designing the new United States. Because if people could see that gender could be fluid, expansive, and respected, if they could see women leading, if they could see non-binary and two-spirit people honored, if they could see a world built on reciprocity instead of hierarchy, the entire foundation the founders were building would crumble. So the erasure began. We see it in the way somebody like Sacagawea's story was rewritten. A 12 or 13-year-old girl who was kidnapped and forced into labor, later portrayed as a willing adult, a heroine who chose to guide Lewis and Clark. We see it in boarding school photographs. Native children stripped of their languages, their clothing, their hair, their family structures, and even their genders. We see it in statues and paintings created by white artists who reshaped Native lives to make them fit the patriarchal order they wanted to preserve. All of this wasn't accidental. It was a strategy. Because Indigenous worldviews proved something the founders could not allow to be visible. Patriarchy is not natural. Binary gender is not universal. Hierarchy is not inevitable, and other systems, freer, more balanced, more humane, existed long before theirs. But here is what the system failed to understand. You cannot erase a truth-rooted worldview. You can only try to bury it, and even then, it survives. Indigenous communities across this land have continued to protect their traditions, languages, gender understandings, and ways of being, despite centuries of attempts to destroy them. And for those of us seeking liberation today, there is so much we must learn and unlearn from them, because the democracy we're trying to build will not come from the worldview the Founding Fathers wrote. It will come from returning to a much older truth, that every person carries wisdom, every person carries belonging, every person carries a world. We do not need to invent brand new possibilities from scratch. We need to honor the ones that were here long before American patriarchy worked to silence them. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Revolution Resolution. If today's episode helped you remember the other ways of living that have always existed, please share it, subscribe, and bring a friend along for the ride. See you next time.